The neural interface device, brain interface devices are what is going to make the big difference. There are companies around the world who now supply cheap devices that you just place onto your head like a hairband. And it's got a tiny little sensor which is non-invasive that touches the skin of your forehead, for instance.
Mhm.
And then it gives you a readout in real time on your device. And by looking at that feedback mechanism, you can learn to control the brainwaves, let's say, that are responsible to make you angry, and also the brainwaves that help you to stay calm, and retrain yourself to have a better brain.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Aspire and Acquire podcast. I'm your host, Sandeep Suri. Join me for listening to some incredible stories about some of the best professionals from very diverse fields like combat flying, robotic surgery, dancing, tea farming, journalism, deep sea diving, and so on. These accomplished professionals are not just outstanding in their jobs, but also have unique stories to share with us. We have tried to make the show truly global by having these guests from different parts of the world. So without further ado, let's dive into the session. The human brain is one of the most intricate and enigmatic structures in the known universe. Nestled within the protective confines of our skull, this 3-pound organ is the epicenter of all our thoughts, emotions, memories, and actions. It's a biological supercomputer, boasting an astonishing 86 billion neurons. This remarkable organ is responsible for everything we are and everything we do, from the simplest reflexes to the most complex intellectual tasks that we conduct. It is the source of our creativity, our ability to love, empathize, and our capacity for learning and adapting. Join us as we embark on this cerebral adventure with our esteemed guest, Theva Nithy, as we unravel the mysteries of the brain right here on Aspire and Acquire. With this, I would like to introduce Theva, a neuroscience-based specialist journalist who works with the chemistries of brain and body for peak performance. Theva has architected the Design Thinking Institute under Malaysia's Prime Minister's Office of Special Innovation Unit. He is the author of the book, Your Child, Your Genius, a parent's guide to maximize a child's potentials. Theva is currently focusing the marginal gains lifestyle habits for mental and physical toughness of the 1% leadership. Theva lives in Malaysia. So let's begin our enlightening journey into the depths of the human mind with our neuroscientist guest, Theva Nithy. Hi, Theva. Welcome to Aspire and Acquire. So good to have you with us.
Hello, Sandeep. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's begin the show by understanding the basics of neuroscience. Can you give us a brief overview of what neuroscience is?
Neuroscience at its very core is simply about the physiology of the brain, and that simply means the structure and the chemistry of the brain. In our context, then, it is not just simply the way the brain works, but knowing how the brain works. How do we harness the methods of the way a brain works and maximize its performance? Maximizing the brain performance means that our behaviors in the world are maximized. So at the end of the day, that's what neuroscience is all about. The chemistry of the brain and the physiology, the structure.
Interesting. I want to go back to your journey in this career, Theva. What really intrigued you to kickstart your journey in the field of neuroscience?
Well, that's a little bit of a weird story because from the time I was a child, I'd always been fascinated by the adults around me in the context of I always used to wonder why they were behaving the way they did. Why did they get angry at some things and not at others? Why they become happy at the smallest things and depressed with things that don't matter? And it was weird because I was just 11 or 12-year-old kid. Then when it got to the point that I was ready for university, I started thinking that, there must be a way. My uncles and aunties were giving me cousins. I thought there must be some way that people can prepare to have children. And that is how my interest in neuroscience started, because I started figuring out one day when I have my own children, I wanted to find a way to maximize the people they would become one day. And that began my journey.
Interesting. So the human brain, as we all know, is incredibly complex. Could you explain how intricate it is and why it's often called the last frontier of science?
It is often called the last frontier of science, but perhaps that's a bit of a misnomer, because it is not the last frontier of science. We know so much about the brain already today, but putting together all that data and connecting the facts in terms of how it translates into human performance in the real world, that is the thing that is the actual current and perhaps final frontier. People like Elon Musk, for instance, through Neuralink, they are trying to create the mass human mind, the earth mind, simply by connecting the Neuralink devices onto Starlink and perhaps create a global consciousness. And that is what is the true story behind why we need artificial intelligence, which is not actually artificial intelligence, but artificial general intelligence, AGI. And perhaps if you combine the brains that are connected on a planetary scale and processed by AGI, then that becomes the final frontier that can drive the human journey into the realms of the unknown, which are, as Gene Roddenberry of Star Trek says, the actual final frontier. What's next? Space travel? Light travel? Well, that's left to be seen, I think. And we're on the verge of that.
Yeah, but to be honest, it sounds interesting, but at the same time, it's scary.
If you take a caveman and put him in our just office building, it'll be an extremely scary experience for him. The lighting alone would be from the gods, and devices from which voices and pictures appeared would be a devil device. He would fall on his knees worshipping the phone. So yes, every new experience, every new frontier is going to be scary and shocking, and at first something that we should not be doing. But our brains evolve to keep on exploring and to keep on challenging and to keep on seeing what's next. And I believe that we will overcome that, and we will always keep discovering what is next, what awaits around the next corner. So
Yeah,
maybe it's supposed to be scary.
yeah. So Theva, as you know, our culture backgrounds and our experiences do play a very critical role the way, we are brought up in life. Are there any differences in brain development between individuals with different life experiences or cultural backgrounds?
Well, look at it this way. If you look at, rather than the very short-term perspective within our own lifespans from the time we were babies and infant and children, why not go back all the way, extrapolate all the way to when we were cavemen and just living in caves and driven by survival needs? Then the role of evolution becomes pretty clear. And evolution plays a role even when we are children and babies, and our experiences and the way we were nurtured. Of course, experiences must act on the chemistry of our brain, programming of our brains, to put it another way. So negative experiences will build some and make them more powerful, but negative experience will destroy and break others and make them incapable of even living a normal life. So yes, experiences, especially in our pre-puberty ages when the sex hormones of the male and female sex hormones have not really fixed our brains yet, and the brains are still very plastic. They play a major role in who we become. and whether our genetic set of programming is able to express itself for the better or for the worse or not.
Can you share a memorable moment or experience from your career as a neuroscientist that had a significant impact on your perspective or research?
Okay, I would like to say that I am more of a specialist generalist, or what Elon Musk calls a polymath, someone who tries to find all the dots in the world and connect them all to form a picture that has some meaning. But I use neuroscience as my core area of expertise, my pillar, to help me understand the world and its people and to implement my training programs and my methodologies. So I am not the typical kind of a neuroscientist who sits in a lab and does research and finds out new functions and attributes of the brain. I take my knowledge and expertise in neuroscience and I try to implement it in terms of peak performance training, be it learning or education, be it corporate performance, or just becoming great parents and designing diets and lifestyles for children. So that is what I am. I am a specialist generalist who harnesses neuroscience to help me to use science and data and logic to improve the performance of the people and clients whom I work with. So that's what I am.
Wow. Okay. So that brings another question for you, Theva. How can a good understanding of neuroscience be used to develop stress management?
Just like pain informs us that there's an injury to our body and then slow down a little bit to help that pain disappear, or tiredness and fatigue informs us that we may not be getting enough sleep and to change something about our sleep pattern or sleep place. So, neuroscience and knowledge of neuroscience helps us to recognize, then realize, and understand what is happening to our brain by looking at the indicators in our performance. By recognizing and understanding these indicators, signs, and symptoms of whether our brain is performing well or not, then we can start doing something to modify the negatives or to keep on keeping up with the positives. So
So
neuroscience, yes.
I was just asking, how do you really push the boundaries there then? I mean, if somebody is really underperforming and you realize through your own techniques that, stress management is playing, let's say, an important role in his or her underperformance, how do you tackle that?
All right. I wouldn't call it pushing the boundaries because pushing the boundaries implies getting into the unknown, but this is a known field. There
Mhm.
is so much data in neuroscience that there's so much you can do with it. We know what's going to happen. We know almost precisely if we change the diet and remove this specific food from the diet. And if we include this type of food into our diet, then this is what is going to happen. This is the pain and this is the handicap in the performance that's going to disappear. And this is what is going to appear that's going to make him a better thinker. So we know these things precisely because we understand the chemistry of the brain now. I don't mean to say that we understand fully 100% of everything there is to know about the brain, but we do understand how learning occurs, how memory is formed, how brain neuroplasticity is maintained, which is the ability of the brain to adapt and adjust and keep up with challenges and new environments. So then if we understand, combine it with the field of nutrition, for instance, and we understand the chemistry of foods that we consume every day, we
Yeah.
can calculate the chemical reactions that will happen in digestion so that the chemistry of our brain can be modified to remove some diseases even or to improve some levels of performance. And stress is a measure of specifically the survival hormones that are being released in the brain, cortisol, adrenaline, for instance.
Mhm.
And certain types of diets and lifestyles can make the release of these survival hormones, limit the release, or even help us to keep up with challenges and stress and not get into a stress state. So it's
Yeah.
all about chemistry.
Yeah, this is fascinating, actually. I would like to double click on nutrition. There is a play of nutrition here, as you said, in our brain health. So, in other words, how do dietary recommendations support optimal cognitive function, including the consumption of foods rich in essential nutrients and antioxidants? Give me some examples here so that listeners could really appreciate in terms of dietary recommendations, or generally, at a very high level, what impacts and which way.
Okay, the first law of nutrition, the first law of hunger and food. It is time for us, modern human beings, to stop looking at food and to consider nutrition. That is how I live my life. I don't consider food at all. I only consider nutrition. So I eat once a day and I drink a whole pile of blended vegetables that supplies me with nutrition, and I limit my hunger for food. What does this mean?
Yeah.
Now, the hunger hormones, neurotransmitters, literally are ghrelin, and the satiety hormone, which stops the feeling of hunger, is called leptin.
Mhm.
Ghrelin, in the days of cavemen, served to make you faster, stronger, more resistant to pain, have more endurance. Because when we were cavemen, we had to run long distances and keep up with animals to get the meat, to end the hunt successfully and have enough food.
Mm.
So there was the neurotransmitter called ghrelin gives us superpowers. Leptin, on the other hand, will limit us and keep us relaxed so that it we will stop eating and just get to sleep. So there are opposing force to everything, but the most important thing of all is to study not so much the antioxidants, but the living enzymes that we get from nutrition rather than food. And always keeping in mind the number one killer and the most legalized poison on the planet is sugar. It is the most easily available. It is the most toxic. I would even go so far to say as it is more toxic than cigarettes or alcohol or drugs even. Yet it is available everywhere and we take it in quantities that kill us slowly but surely.
It's freely available, and it could be a slow poison, as you rightly said. Yeah, interesting. Switching gears, talking about emotional intelligence, understanding how the neural basis of emotions and empathy can help in enhancing emotional intelligence, leadership skills, and overall interpersonal relationships in a corporate world. Can you just elaborate this, please?
Okay. So our brains are divided into three main components. The primal brain, which is an instinctive, intuitive brain that responds to survival threat. Then there's the mammalian brain and the reptile brain. The mammalian brain is more of the emotional brain that associates experiences with our emotions. And the reptile brain is more of the brain that craves pleasure and reward and avoids pain and things that we don't like. So, understanding these things and how it feels to be in a state where the mammalian brain is in control or the reptile brain is in control. And finally, the most important thing of all, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is a very thin slice, tissue thin slice of brain that resides just below our forehead. And the prefrontal cortex is what makes us human. That's what differentiates us and makes us the number one species on the planet. So understanding and recognizing how we feel when we are in different parts of the brain are in control of us will help us to know that at a particular point when we are engaging with someone, whether anger is taking over or whether excitement is taking over, both positives and negatives can jeopardize the way we make decisions and the choices we make,
Mhm.
or whether we are being logical and we are using data matched to science and putting it into a correct flow of logic. Believe it or not, neuroscience gave us a deep understanding of how we are functioning if we learn to this another behavioral performance level of observational preparedness. Observational preparedness is simply the idea that we are always watching ourselves as we engage with the world. We are literally standing outside ourselves and watching us as we engage with people in the world and deciding what changes to make as we go along. And at the end of the day, I think that is what performance and leadership is about. Leadership, especially, is just a degree of how inspiringly influential we are. That's it.
Mm.
2 words. If you are the type of leader who inspires your people,
Mhm.
then you have got all your bases covered. Because if you can inspire someone, you're going to be very influential with that person. So, neuroscience will help you to understand not just the what, which is inspiring influentialness, but how to become inspiringly influential. And that is the real power of neuroscience. Recognizing and understanding and then practicing the how. Over to you, Sandeep.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, so as we all know, the world around us is becoming more futuristic. Are there any cutting edge technologies or tools in neuroscience that you believe will have a significant impact on the field in the near future?
The neural interface device, brain interface devices are what is going to make the big difference. There are companies around the world who now supply cheap devices that you just place onto your head like a hairband. And it's got a tiny little sensor which is non invasive that touches the skin of your forehead, for instance.
Mhm.
And then it gives you a readout in real time on your device. And by looking at that feedback mechanism, you can learn to control the brainwaves, let's say, that are responsible to make you angry, and also the brainwaves that help you to stay calm, and retrain yourself to have a better brain. This process is called neurofeedback, and I use these devices with my clients as well in Malaysia. They take I train them how to use the devices and the training program within 30 minutes. They take it home and then they conduct it on their own in their homes. It takes
Wow.
5 seconds to set up, and the impact, the performance enhancing effects of these devices can be seen within a matter of hours. They are that fast.
Fascinating.
So they
Are they
are
very,
going to have
sorry, are they very expensive or they're not?
not at all, not at all. They used to be in the thousands of dollars, but now they're available with the software installed on your device for as little as 99 US dollars. And you don't even need consultation from a specialist, which is really bad for me. So I try to make my clients always be hooked
Right.
on me and think that they cannot survive without me. It's much more profitable that way.
Right.
But it's a losing game because at the end of the day, these things have become so decentralized that soon people will take it for granted that, whenever they have a headache, rather than pop a pill, they'll just put a device on and remove the brainwave, retrain down the brainwave that is causing the pain. And that is a possibility now, today, as we speak.
So I want to kind of ask you a little more tricky questions now.
Oh,
Maybe.
no, no, please, please. I'm not in the mood to be tricked now.
Okay. As our understanding of the brain grows, we encounter ethical dilemmas. What are some ethical challenges in neuroscience research, and how do researchers address them? But this is a very common
Well,
phenomenon. For example, extra precautions must be taken when conducting research involving vulnerable populations such as children, people with cognitive impairments, so on and so forth. So, how do we really manage that piece?
well, there are plenty of ethical committees that prevent. I mean, you cannot really do research on human beings so freely, which is why many Western research companies come to the Asian countries to conduct research that will no way pass ethical committees in their own countries. But in the Asian countries, especially the South Asian countries, the laws and the regulations are not so rigid for now.
Mhm.
So I would say it's always invasion of privacy. Just like every single person's fingerprint is unique and a retina scan is also unique.
Right.
We have, with the presence of AGI, which is able to look at so much data all at once. Even brain waves can become a signature of a person. And it used to be a few years ago that you needed a receiver, a recorder, a sensor to be touching the skin of a person in order to read the brain waves. But we are right on the verge of contactless sensors so that you may be able to read a person from a distance. So that is also the problem with Google Glasses. People started
Right.
fearing that anyone could just put on the glasses and then scan a face and find out its address, and stalking starts and everything else that is associated follows. So invasion of privacy and the danger to the physical person, I think, is going to become a real concern very fast as technology and AI improves.
Yeah. So before we let you go, Theva, are there any practical tips or strategies informed by neuroscience that you can share with our listeners?
Okay, breathing. Simple thing, one word, breathing. Neuroscience has proven that when we breathe, most of us, you'll probably deny that you ever engage in something that, like what I'm about to say. Most of us use our mouth. Modern living has conditioned us to breathe with our mouth. But the simple fact that if you breathe through your nose, the airflow passes over the 8 sinus cavities in your facial bones, and the mucus that lines the sinus cavities releases nitric oxide.
Mhm.
And nitric oxide is simply produced in the body. When you breathe through your nose, it gets absorbed. It goes down into our lungs with the airflow that we are breathing in. And there it is absorbed into the bloodstream. And nitric oxide opens up blood brain circulation and enhances the performance of the brain. So, with simple at home devices, neural interface devices, you can measure the performance increases just by breathing correctly. There's a whole lot of truth in the ancient martial arts and breathing for like pranayam and qigong, the Chinese martial art.
Mhm.
It says that breathing will impact your brain. So neuroscience has proven that this is true. So I would say that's the easiest practice, just a takeaway message just from today. Breathe
Yeah.
powerfully through your nose and into your diaphragm, into your stomach, not into your chest. And that alone will see performance increases, not just from thinking, but sleep quality, alertness, and the ability to stay calm will improve within a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
So I would
And-
say that's the easiest.
Yeah. And the yoga also follows a similar philosophy, right? So
Yeah, that's pranayam. Pranayam is
that's
an
right.
aspect of yoga.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And what about nutrition? I mean, as a takeaway, would you like to talk about in terms of building your strategy, our daily rhythm in terms of what you eat, along with breathing, of course, is an important thing, as you said. But anything on the nutrition as a takeaway?
The three big things are eating, breathing, and sleeping.
Mm.
So put in your 7 to 8 hours of sleeping every day. Nutrition, the impact of sugar is so powerful in its toxicity that just the simple act of removing sugar, which is the hardest thing to do of all, from our diet makes all the difference. You don't have to add your antioxidants and vegetables and everything else and spend a lot of money on multivitamins. All you need to do is cut out sugar from your diet. That
Mhm.
one thing will make all the difference in the world. So don't need to make it hard, don't need to make it expensive, don't have to take supplements, don't have to buy organic vegetables. Just try to remove sugar from your diet. That's all. As a first easy step, breathing, eating, sleeping. Those 3 steps.
Right.
If you want to go further in future sessions, we can talk about actual
Sure.
lifestyles and habits to be practiced. But for
Yeah.
today, I would say that is the message.
Fantastic. Great. Hey, listeners, we hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the fascinating world of neuroscience with Theva. We hope this episode has left you with a sense of wonder and curiosity about the brain and its mysteries. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive and keep turning into Aspire and Acquire for more thought provoking conversations with experts from across the spectrum of human knowledge. And of course, a huge thank you to you, Theva, for sharing the insights with us today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Today, our favorite pick is Class Central. It offers popular courses from 100 plus universities, including all Ivy League colleges. It has about 80 providers like Coursera, EDX, and it offers courses from 1,000 plus institutions like Google, IBM, United Nations, etc. The site has more than 60 million visitors and 200,000 reviews for easy reference and decision making. The URL is www.classcentral.com. Check it out and kickstart your learning process today.